Well, for more on Venezuela's economic future under President Maduro, I'm joined by Mariano de Alba. He's an expert in international law. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
So let's start with your reaction to Maduro's inaugural address. Any sort of new policy initiatives outlined there?
Well, really, no. I mean, the Maduro regime has this habit of saying they're going to announce economic measures, and then the day comes and they simply, push the line further away. So in today's address, it was more political, and Maduro promised to announce, new economic measures next week. So we'll have to wait and see. But in reality, the experience so far has been that when new announcements are made, the economic measures don't really make any sense.
And so then, for another 6 years under Maduro, what does this mean for the everyday lives of Venezuelans?
Well, I think in principle, it means more of the same, which is a very dire picture. It means hyperinflation. It means a lot of personal insecurity. And I mean, in my view, the Maduro regime has shown over the last years that it is simply incapable of managing the country. And that is having, real life consequences on the people. So, I mean, the picture is really, really dire. And I think that if the government really wants to seek a solution, it will have to undertake profound changes in its way of conducting politics first, and then in its way of handling the economy.
Now, we've already seen, obviously, millions of Venezuelans leaving the country, trying to find better economic prospects. So what does this new, renewed Maduro government, what is this going to do in terms of regional reaction?
Well, I think that the region, the Western Hemisphere, has been very clear that they do not recognize the legitimacy of the new Maduro government. Why? Because under Venezuelan law and under international law, at least the one applicable to the Western Hemisphere, there is a certain democratic guarantees. And the election that brought Maduro to power today in May 2018 simply did not comply with the minimum requirements under Venezuelan law and under international law. So Maduro is facing a lot of international pressure. Non-recognition is one, and then there is certain countries like the US who have enacted substantial sanctions against its officials and also against the issuance of debt.
Right.
And right now we're also seeing, we're starting to see countries like Chile, Argentina, and Peru also issuing international sanctions against government officials.
Now, you mentioned U.S. sanctions, and we know that, according to Reuters, more U.S. sanctions reportedly on the way, this time targeting a Venezuelan currency exchange network scheme. And we know that Venezuela is also challenging the U.S. sanctions with the World Trade Organization. With this standoff with the U.S., what impact is that having on Venezuela's economy?
Well, the impact is substantial. Why? First, because the amount of cash that Venezuela still receives, the Venezuelan government still receive, it comes hugely from the U.S. The U.S. it's right now the only country that actually pays cash for Venezuelan oil exports. So that's a huge concern for the Maduro regime. And second, obviously, the U.S. government has been very clear about the Maduro regime, solving the political conflict in Venezuela. So they have taken some actions against Venezuela and PDVSA, the oil company. They have limited their ability to issue new debt. And that obviously has caused the effect of severely limiting the ability of the government to deal with the economy.
Now, on the flip side, we know that Venezuela is getting some support from some countries, especially including China. How do you see this relationship impacting Venezuela's economy?
I think that the relationship with China is very limited, and it will continue to be very limited. What we have seen is that China, starting in 2006, provided a lot of money to the Hugo Chavez government, and also at the beginning of the Maduro government, but they have stopped. Why? Because they have realized that it is simply a bad investment. Those amount of money that they have given, it has not turned into more oil production. Actually, the oil production has severely declined over the last years. And also the projects that the Chinese government has in Venezuela they have faced substantial problems, especially in terms of the personal security of its employees. So right now we see a very limited relationship with China. China, it's going to continue to recognize the Maduro regime, but it's not going to give more money. Right. And I think that it's going to simply they're going to try to limit their exposure in Venezuela and try to, safeguard their existing investments in the country.
So if we look at where Venezuela's economy is now, obviously when you hear things like millions of percents of inflation, it's really hard to wrap your mind around. But as we look ahead now, knowing that this is going to be what the fate of the country is for the next 6 years, what is your outlook?
It's very bad because, first of all, the Maduro regime is simply incapable of dealing with the country. So it's very hard to see how can they can really, reverse course and manage the economy correctly. So I think that in the end, for Venezuelans to recover hope, the Maduro regime has to go. But also, there's other problems. For example, the opposition is not sufficiently coordinated. They have not been able to bring confidence to the people. And also, there are huge problems like, for example, corruption, as you mentioned, but also the presence of terrorist groups in the country. So right now, Venezuela is basically a failed state. So even if there's a change, it's going to require a lot of international assistance in terms of money and in technical assistance to recover the control of the country and start, putting the economy back in track.
All right, thank you so much. Great to have you on. Mariano de Alba, they're expert in international law.